I think Denny's win can be a turning point for the 18, as silly as that can be. Listen, they haven't had the best races this week. It's not his fault that the tape got put on the grill. That's not a driver situation. Show me a season where he's not in the mix. That's my argument.
Hey race fans, welcome into another episode of Backseat Drivers. Here in Studio 3, I have Steve Letarte and Kim Coon joining me here. I am Alex Weaver, and it's all about Martinsville. Short track season is right now for the NASCAR Cup Series, and we kick things off with Richmond. So let's recap that before we move to Martinsville and start eating the hot dogs for this week. But we saw one driver. I want to get right into it with you guys. We saw one driver with Ryan Blaney show a lot of speed. Richmond is possibly one of his worst tracks. He will tell you that. I'm not just speaking that out of existence of my own mind. But Steve, he can't close out a race here lately. What's going on with the 12?
Well, it's easy to pick on his stats. So it is true. Ryan Blaney has led over 100 laps in 10 races and hasn't won any of them. But 9 of those have been short tracks. Martinsville, Richmond, Bristol, the lone standout being Daytona. So I'm not going to pick on a guy that he qualifies well and he has a fast race car. It is true. I think if I'm on that team, I'm sitting down with Ryan saying, hey, what do I have to do better to help you? Do I have to ask you different questions? It's obvious strategy, adjustments, all of those things aren't making the correct soup for the last 100 laps of the race. But I'd much rather have a fast car that doesn't win than have a slow car that doesn't win. These are good problems to have for the 12 team and Ryan Blaney. And I think, like I said, they're mostly short tracks. So that kind of tips the stats and makes it look a little worse. But hey, listen, leading laps is always a good thing. You're trying to get in the guy's head. Let the guy be. He's doing fine.
So you're not worried? Not
no,
worried at all.
no.
Okay.
You're worried about winning poles and leading laps?
I didn't say I was.
I can give you a list of teams I'm worried about, but the 12's not on it.
Well, speaking of getting in his head, that's what you have to do if you're his crew chief, if you're his spotter, is keep Ryan Blaney calm. And you have to remember, he and Jonathan Hassler, this is a new pairing. Jonathan had been on the Team Penske before, but not in a crew chief position. So I think they're still finessing that relationship, the communication. But specifically to Richmond, you know, Ross Chastain gets him riled up. Ryan is on the radio, not happy, and then that parlays into using up his tires because he's driving angry. So I don't necessarily think you say, oh, Ryan can't close. It's they're leading laps. They have fast cars, 3 poles in the last 7 races. It's just about maybe finessing that team and what they need to do throughout the race.
Yeah, if you didn't get a chance to listen to the scanner of Ryan Blaney, find that somewhere, because don't listen to it with your children. That's all I'm going to say. All right, well, a team, too, that we had a really big question mark and kind of we're starting to doubt a little bit in this season was Joe Gibbs Racing and the Toyotas really as a whole. The only one that's really showed any kind of speed out of the Toyota camp was Kurt Busch in that 45, but Denny Hamlin shuts everybody up. He wins at Richmond, gets the home state win there, but has Joe Gibbs finally figured it out? When it comes to Richmond, they're named every single year and every single time that we go to Richmond. But can we have speed now for JGR?
So I actually think the truth is that when you look at Joe Gibbs Racing in the start of the year, execution was their issue more than speed. When you go back and look at the races, yes, they need to be faster. That's just a statement for every race team that runs every race. I mean, you want to go back, you want to have a better race car. But when you look at Joe Gibbs Racing, this is the first real clean race that Denny Hamlin has run. We saw overheating issues out of the Toyotas. You know, there are a lot of things mixed in the start of this year other than just not fast enough. Now, that's easy to point at because it is a contest of speed. But when you go back and look at Richmond, the 19 was fast, the 11, the first clean race, the 18 once again didn't execute correctly. So I think it's more of that. I don't know if it's a distraction with the new car or why. These veteran drivers, veteran teams, veteran crew chiefs, you think they would be a little cleaner on pit road. They tried that new style pit stop at Richmond. It looked good. So I think a lot of things are pointing Joe Gibbs Racing way. Now, is the raw speed there? We'll see over the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Is Denny your number 1 at Joe Gibbs right now?
How can you have a 1?
Okay.
No, I don't think you can have a number 1. I think you name the track, and I'll tell you which one I would take, but they have a great organizational issue, which is guys that can kind of win in any style.
All right. Kim?
I'm going to say no, they do not have it figured out. And that's because historically Richmond has been Joe Gibbs Racing place. All 4 cars were fast. All 4 cars, you know, shuffled towards the front throughout the race. And then it was also a strategy race. And so I don't necessarily think that you can look at Richmond's results and say, oh, yep, JGR has it figured out. I'm going to even say, like, that parlays into Martinsville. I don't think we can take Martinsville kind of as a standalone, you know, if they do well, have they figured it out? I want to see, you know, the next 5, 6 races, what JGR is able to do as we go to different tracks, because they haven't been it for me prior to Richmond. I think Richmond's kind of this one-off. They're always good there. It's a finesse track. Their crew chiefs know kind of how to work the strategy. So it's a wait-and-see game for me in terms of Joe Gibbs Racing.
Well, you mentioned that strategy. We saw one in particular use it a little bit more than the rest of the Joe Gibbs Racing camp. So, Kim, I want to start with you because I know before the show we talked about MTJ, James Small. It looked like it was the right call for Martin. It looked like it might be a 19 kind of day in victory lane. Ended up not working out, but did you agree with the pick to stay out?
No, absolutely not. And MTJ and James Small, they took the two-stop approach during that second stage, and it worked out brilliantly for them. He stopped first. He kind of led that series of green flag stops. They came in sixth. They had been running sixth before that stop during stage 2. Cycled out. They were first, won that stage. If you're James Small in this team, why aren't you doing that in the final stage? Obviously, it worked. Really, for all of these teams, I don't know how you look at what the 19 was able to do with a two-stop strategy during stage 2 and not make that your call for the final stage.
So this is an unfortunate answer, but I think the 24, the 19, and the 11 all played the correct strategy for their position on the racetrack. The toughest part about calling a race is the position you're currently in. The 19 of Martin Truex Jr. caught the 24 car, couldn't get by him for multiple laps, so James Small found a way to give his driver an advantage. The advantage he chose was fresher tires by running about 10 laps longer than the 24. The 24 of William Byron as the leader was the first on pit road, and then he kind of reassumed the lead. Very hard to pit from the lead. The 11 of Denny Hamlin was kind of out of the picture. Their only option was to pit in extra time and give his driver an advantage. So the math would say two stops should work every time. But the problem is, I can tell you how all of those strategies also go wrong, right? William Byron pits from the lead because the math says it's correct. A pit issue, a caution flag, an issue on pit road. Now you've lost a race that you gave up the lead of. Martin Truex Jr. had better tires, couldn't get by William Byron when they were only 5 laps. So James Small runs about 10 laps longer, tries to give a little bit better advantage. And you just don't know in traffic. Math would say he shouldn't catch Byron, but maybe you catch him on a lap car and find him. And then the Denny Hamlin, that's an easy strategy to look on paper and say, well, this should work. But you have to have a pretty masterful driver-spotter pairing to work traffic. Because data's great, but in the end, there are human beings driving these race cars. I know we want to forget about that and make them all computers, but those human beings, both the aggressor and Denny Hamlin, and every lap driver that he's going by, he has to do it cleanly, efficiently. It doesn't take but 1 or 2 hang-ups to have a strategy. So I think 3 guys called the right race, and in the end, the 11. I'll tell you who surprised me the most was Kevin Harvick. I didn't see a strategy that put him in contention, and he matched the 11 strategy and then had enough pace to make it pretty interesting.
All right, well, coming from the crew chief's mouth himself, they all made the right call. All right, next one, I have it circled, if you can see the proof. I'm pumped to get into this one because this was a hot topic here this weekend in Richmond. I'm not really sure why all of a sudden we're talking about this, but apparently the driver's code is just out the window here for all of us in the NASCAR Cup Series. Kim, you want to start with this one? And then we'll end it over there with Steve. But do drivers respect the driver's code anymore? We heard MTJ talk about it. We heard Denny talk about it, both in the press room there at Richmond. But apparently there's no driver code anymore.
Well, I think the question you have to ask is who originally had a driver's code and who didn't. And you talk to some of these drivers who have kids who are coming up through the ranks and saying, this is just how it is nowadays. These kids are plowing through each other. It's demo derby out there. They're doing anything they can win. And so I think we're maybe seeing that from some of the younger generation drivers is it's no holds barred. They do what they can to get the win. Where you talk about some of the veterans, the Kevin Harvicks, the Denny Hamlins, the Martin Truex Jr.'s, they still live and die by this driver code. And, I'm going to respect you, you respect me kind of thing. So I think it's not a yes or a no. It's who has a driver's code and who doesn't.
What's a driver's code?
Steve doesn't have a driver's code.
So listen, I've been in this sport for 30 years, and what I have learned is I don't pretend to be a driver. I was a crew chief. I crew chief some of the best in Jeff Gordon and Dale Jr., and I saw how they raced on the racetrack, but I've really left what happens on the racetrack between drivers. It's their own conversation to correct, their own conversation to referee. NASCAR has said time and time again that as long as you're racing for position, we're going to stay out of it. It really comes down to the drivers. Now, listen, I'll give my analysis on whether I think it was good, whether I would support it, whether I liked it as a race fan. But that changes every week, right? Ross Chastain gets hit by Dinger, sends Dinger back. He hits Bowman, Ross wins. I don't know, as a fan, like, I didn't have a bad taste in my mouth. I was okay with that. On the other hand, when I go back to this week's Xfinity Series race, Ty Gibbs leads, John Hunter Nemechek runs him down, passes him cleanly. Now, I'm fine that Ty gets back to his bumper and kind of moves him out of the way off turn 2. What I didn't love is the move in turn 3 where he just kind of straightened the wheel. He had position, so I think you have to race that door-to-door back to the line. So, you know, when you look at driver's code, listen, I just don't know where it is. I've been looking for it. I've yet to find it.
So who writes the driver's code book? Nobody? We just don't have one ever?
I think it goes back to, what do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be respected in the garage? How do you want to be raced? And it's okay. What I get frustrated about is when you race one way, then get raced the same way, and then you complain. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Do you think the older drivers aren't schooling some of these younger guys enough on driver's code?
I don't know. I'd have to ask some of the younger drivers. I will say, you look at a Ross Chastain, someone I think is helping these young drivers out, and I'm going to give the veterans the credit. When I look at Ross Chastain, and he has said it in a few interviews this year, he used some reservation in other opportunities. You know, he was like, I'm not going to make this aggressive move. I'm just going to take the second, third, or fourth that my car has. And I think that's racing karma that looked back on him at COTA and said, hey, you know what? You've made a bunch of good decisions, so we're going to allow you to be the winner today. I think that the veterans are leading the way, and I think they lead by example. Listen, racing's got more intense than ever. These 2 wide restarts are crazy. So I do think the line gets blurred at times, not to mention the playoffs. You want to talk about the driver code out the window? Put the playoffs.
Rapid response powered by 5-Hour Energy. These are short and sweet. Some of these, if you guys just want to say yes or no, I'm not even going to follow up on that. Will we see a driver make the playoffs solely on points? Steve, we are 7 drivers so far this year. Kim, come on, best answer.
Oh, best answer is no, a driver won't make it on points. 7 different winners. You still have at least 7 that will win with a couple of outliers. I think we see more than 16 winners. Some guy who has a win will be out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Not a chance.
No.
Multiple drivers,
No.
2 or 3 make it on points. You said outliers. Well, name me an outlier. Name me somebody that's going to upset the top 16. Yes, we've had a Briscoe win and a Hendrick win and a Chastain win. I'll give you that.
What about like a Reddick, a Jones, an
Yeah.
Austin Dillon? You have Stuart Haas
Bubba.
racing
Okay,
drivers
so
that could
if
get in the mix.
I start to see, I need 2 or 3 more drivers that we didn't have all in our mental win list, they're going to have to win for me to change the answer to that question. Because right now, I have another. You said it yourself. We've had 7. You can find 7 more. Okay, that means 2 gets in on points. No
but look
way.
at the tracks we go to. We have road courses. We have Daytona as the season finale.
I don't buy it.
All right.
AJ Allmendinger's not eligible, so when he wins a
Disagree.
road course, it doesn't upset it. We can disagree.
All right,
Okay.
Kim and I are buying in.
Yeah.
No
You can buy my
driver-
coffee when you're wrong. It's gonna be
driver
great.
on points. All right, next question. Who's currently the top dog at Hendrick Motorsports? It looked like yesterday it was going to be William Byron and Rudy Fugle sitting there in victory lane, but ended up not being the song and dance for them. But who's the top dog at HMS, Kim?
It's going to go Kyle Larson. I know he doesn't necessarily have, all of the finishes we expected based on what we saw last season, but I'm looking at that entire team. Cliff Daniels, you listen to him on the radio during the race. He has got everything figured out, it feels like, in terms of strategy, what other teams are doing. So I think collectively, if we're looking at an entire team, it's still the 5 car for me.
The top dog at Hendrick Motorsports is Rick Hendrick, Chad Knaus, and Jeff Andrews because they put
Hey.
together
Stole my
4
answer.
drivers. They put together 4 drivers and 4 crew chiefs that I believe can win every single week, and that is nearly impossible. It's impossible to find that much talent. It's impossible to cultivate that much talent. And the toughest part is it's impossible to keep 4 of those guys working well together. Even after Chase and Larson had their dust up at Fontana, they've seemed to have gotten through it. Every week, one of them underperforms, but one of the teammates is there to shock us all and run better than perhaps we would expect, right? And that's where, I was surprised that Chase wasn't better at Richmond. I was probably surprised that William was as good as he was. And every week, that continues to move. So I give it to the ownership and the management that they have a pretty impressive 4-car lineup.
Steve literally stole my answer. I have Chad Knaus and JG written right here. So, all right, Martinsville, hot dogs, short track, paperclip. I'm so pumped for this weekend. Under the lights there, Saturday night racing, beating, banging, short tracks, we're continuing. But we always come out of there with a little more emotions than how we entered the racetrack. So is there a rivalry at Martinsville that we're looking at specifically, Steve?
I don't think anyone's going to be wrecking one another, but you can still find a way to make it more difficult to be raced around. We'll see some of that. Listen, it's the best racetrack on the circuit. It's the best race, second best race of the year. The best race of the year is the playoff version in Martinsville, but under the lights is going to be a great atmosphere. So no, I don't have a specific rivalry going in. I'm more interested to see the long list of rivalries
coming out
on the way out.
Yeah, love it. Kim, what about you?
For me, it's Denny versus who this time? You look at history, it's Denny versus Logano, Denny versus Chase Elliott, Denny versus Alex Bowman. Denny Hamlin always seems to find himself in a dust-up at Martinsville, so it's a blank for me, but it's Denny Hamlin versus X.
All right, Denny Hamlin usually gets booed at Martinsville, so I'm just looking to see how the fans treat him when he heads another home state track coming up this weekend. All right, over under the Martinsville winner, age 30. We saw the first of this season over the age of 30. Denny got one for the 40-year-old guys, so over and under Martinsville winner. Kim?
You know, you look at the past, 5 races, Martin Truex Jr. has, I think, 3 of those wins, but I think it's going to be an under 30 because you also look at who's been consistent there. Hendrick, to your point, they've got something figured out. They always typically have run well at Martinsville. Looking at the Hendrick guys, also looking at Blaney, he runs well. So I think the under 30 is going to be back this weekend at Martinsville.
I'm going to take the over, but I wish you would make the over at 29 so I would get Larson in that group as well. The reason I'm going to say the over is because Martinsville, you do have to have a great race car, but much like Richmond, you still have to have a little bit of veteran artistic flair. You got to understand how to manage your emotion, manage the car, manage the equipment, manage your tire, manage your brakes. That's a lot of managing, and I believe that this car lends itself to aggressive driving. That's why we've seen great speed out of Ross Chastain, Chase Briscoe, Tyler Reddick. But when we go back to the paperclip, there is still the simple fact of 36 cars do not fit very well on that racetrack. You have to find your way to manage your way through 500 miles. We talk about the Coca-Cola 600. I would argue that mentally one of the longest races in the series is Martinsville, just because it's always in traffic. It's just taxing.
A lot of braking.
And I believe that a veteran is just going to find a way. But like I said, 29 is a lot better than 30 because there's one guy at 29 that I think is going to run really well. But I'm going to give the veterans a tip of the hat. I think another over 30-year-old.
Yeah, me too. Get the skincare out because I'm going over 30 for this weekend.
Oh.
Which car are you banking on for the rest of the season? I'm not talking about just Martinsville. You get one car. You're riding it all the way to Phoenix. Come on, Letarte.
So I'm going to take a guy that hasn't won. If I have to take one driver for now to start the whole season, I'll take Kyle Busch in the 18. I think that here's my opinion. First of all, I think this is very next to impossible to guess with 7 different winners.
Well, sure.
I couldn't tell who was going to run good at Richmond.
But it's fun.
But for the sake of fun, listen, I'll take Kyle Busch. I mean, show me a season where he's not in the mix. That's my argument. I would say Kyle Busch consistently always finds a way. And I think that, as we talked about earlier, they haven't had the best races. This week, it's not his fault that the tape got put on the grill. That's not a driver situation. I look at this race much like a Martinsville race a few years ago where they were awful. And he spun out. They made adjustments, recovered, and he came all the way back to run very well. That was a turning point in that season. I think Denny's win can be a turning point for the 18, as silly as that can be. Listen, we're Joe Gibbs Racing. We know how to win. Denny just proved it. Martin Truex Jr. was right there if Denny faltered. We have the great equipment. It's time for Kyle and his crew chief to sit down, figure out what they need to do, strengthen their team, their communication, whatever it is. But if you're forcing me to pick one, which is next to impossible, why not take a 2-time champ?
I'm shocked. Color me shocked.
Mission accomplished.
Kind of speechless.
What do you guess? You're going to take the other Kyle?
No.
Okay.
No. This was a hard question.
I know.
Who do you bank on, especially since we've seen 7 different winners? I'm going to go with the 12 car of Blaney. You know, so far they've put together really great weekends in terms of they come to the track with fast cars. We're back to this practice qualifying kind of dynamic. We know how important it is to get your foot out of the gate strong. They're doing that. They obviously have fast cars in the race because they're leading laps. I think it will be contingent on how soon Blaney wins. I think once he gets that win, it becomes a multiple win season for him if he does it soon enough. And so right now, I'm watching Blaney in that 12 car. I think this could be the year for him.
You guys are taking a lot of what ifs. I'm riding with my championship pick because when it comes to the playoffs, way out on a limb. When it comes to the playoffs, it's all about survive and advance. We're in the middle, well, I guess we're at the end of March Madness now, but survive and advance. 5, Kyle Larson. Easy. See you in Phoenix. Won't see you two in Phoenix. All right, Backseat Bets presented by MGM. This is my favorite part. Lucky for us, we have the head-to-head matchup pro over here back on the table. Finally, you're back with us.
Is that you? Because my head-to-head picks have been really bad.
Mine haven't been great either.
I understand the format, not very good at this.
Let's get into it. First up, these two have history. Kim, you already mentioned it. Chase Elliott versus Denny Hamlin. This is not about who wins the race. This is just about how well they outperform the other driver. Casey?
Outperforming, I'm having Chase Elliott. He's had way more consistency than Hamlin in that 11 team throughout the season. And Chase runs well at Martinsville. I'm going Chase Elliott.
I don't think it's a bad pick. I'm taking Denny Hamlin just because I think that the pressure of mistakes was mounting. Driver mistakes, he blamed it on himself, said, hey, he's missed a shift, did some other things. He went to victory lane. I think he's just going to be relaxed and have fun at Martinsville. And I don't care who the race car driver is. When you kind of just let them relax and be at their best, I think that's when they do their best. I think Chase is looking for a good run. Danny Hamlin's just looking for another win.
Yeah, Chase Elliott will disagree on both of these things because I'm not picking him, and I'm also riding with momentum, so I'm going the 11, Denny Hamlin. Next up, the 2Rs, Ryan Blaney versus Ross Chastain. Both showed a lot of speed this past weekend in Richmond, which was a little unexpected for me, I think. Steve, you want to kick us off with this one? I'm
taking Blaney. I think he qualifies so well. We talked about how many laps he leads. Listen, Ross Chastain is perhaps the surprise of the year, regardless of the win, his consistency. But I have to agree with what Kim said earlier. If Ryan continues to just lead laps, eventually I think the opportunity is going to come his way. But these matchups are great because I think they're going to run right next to one another.
This was the hardest matchup for me, but then I got to go Blaney. I have to agree. We talk about how well their qualifying efforts are. The first pit stall, if they're able to get the pole again, is so crucial at Martinsville. And regardless of whether or not he's able to turn that into a win, just if they're able to get that first pit stall based on what their qualifying has been throughout the beginning of the season, that puts you ahead of the game the entire Martinsville race.
All right, just for the sole reason of disagreeing with these two, Ross Chastain, why not? Watermelon and hot dog. Sounds like a good combination to me. Next up, Martin Truex Jr. versus William Byron, both with different strategies this past weekend. Will they continue at Martinsville, Casey?
I know I said that the winner will come from the under 30 camp at Martinsville, but this head-to-head matchup, we're not talking winners, we're just talking better finishes. I'm going Martin Truex Jr. I just think, you look at that, and he's a multi-time winner at Martinsville. I think he's got a little more finesse in terms of his racing skill at these short tracks than William Byron.
I'm taking MTJ for the simple fact that earlier in the year, I didn't know how he would adapt to the new car. He went to a track where he statistically is great at, and he was in the mix again. So why would that not carry forward to Martinsville? I think it's going to be the 19 of Martin Truex Jr. that's going to win this matchup.
Multiple clocks there in the Truex household. It's called Martinsville. Duh, Martin Truex Jr. Last one, the two Kyles. Steve's riding this one apparently all the way to Phoenix. So if you don't pick Kyle Busch, I'm super disappointed. Kyle Busch versus Kyle Larson.
I'm taking Kyle Busch.
Shocker.
I just think that, Kyle Larson, now there's high expectation, but they have struggled with some consistency to their level. Now, it's still a good year. I'm not knocking them. But if you go back to how phenomenal the 5 was last year, they definitely are a little more hit or miss this year. I think all these matchups are very tough to pick because they're good matchups. I think Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson, I actually think we're going to have another new winner. So for that reason, I'm taking Kyle Busch.
Getting a little rowdy over there.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to pick the opposite, Kyle. I'm going with Kyle Larson. I think, Kyle Busch, they had a pretty good showing at Richmond. He is good at short tracks. He's got the most short track wins of active drivers. But I think something's going to ruffle his feathers at Martinsville, and he's going to get in his own head.
So she gave me every reason it should be my pick and then disagreed with me on a principle.
Yeah, that's how we do it here.
This is a great relationship we're working on right here. Real good team unison here on the show. Right? Good.
Yeah, always. Teammates at all times of the day. Well, if it's a short track, I'm going with the Busch automatically. So Kyle Busch on this one, even though I'm just going to sit on the back of the 5 and wave to you guys as we ride off to Phoenix. But, we'll get there. We'll get there.
I want to pick again in 15 weeks and see if you still want to pick your same guy. Let a guy look at a little bit more data here.
He doesn't have MTJ in the playoffs, so.
Hey, listen. He probably will. Actually, yeah.
Yes,
that's going to cost me a round of drinks, I have a feeling.
Yes, it absolutely will.
Especially if he wins this weekend.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to see it. Listen, and the reason I picked him in his matchup is his performance at Richmond I was impressed by. I thought he did like the strategy kind of fell against him, but behind the wheel, I'm not sure Martin could have done anything different. I mean, he drove a very, very impressive race. So that's what I think this year, what makes this year so much fun is I think we got to a point last year where we kind of could pick the 2 or 3 that were going to battle.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck who's going to run top 3 at Martinsville.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love the parody of the next gen. It's definitely 7 races in, and it's a check mark still for me. All right, Martinsville this weekend. We're racing at the Paperclip, and it's under the lights Saturday night for the NASCAR Cup Series. And I have a feeling there's going to be some hurt feelings, maybe less hurt fenders, because this next gen car can take a little bit more damage than the Gen 6 car. Martinsville, Victory Lane, Saturday night. It's going to be a late one for all of us. But Kim, who you got in Victory Lane?
Well, originally I was looking at Martin Truex Jr. just because of his history there. To your point, it's Martin in Martinsville. But, you know, I kind of put all my money on the under 30 camp, and Hendrick runs well there. I think it's going to be Chase Elliott.
Oh. She does not have that
I don't have it.
down.
It was a surprise answer.
Surprise.
I had a question mark next to MTJ, though.
Steve?
Well, I'm going to go against my earlier in the year prediction, and I'm going to say MTJ, and here's why. Here's why. Rear tires are going to be the most important thing at Martinsville, and he did the best job at Richmond to save it. I believe Martin Truex Jr. is going to win. Go ahead.
The end of Richmond, he literally said, I used up all my tires.
Because he was trying to win the race, but he was in position because he managed them the best for the other 365 laps. MTJ. You have Chase, I have MTJ for a coffee. Let me guess, Kyle Larson?
No, I'm not picking Kyle Larson to win every race. I'm going Kevin Harvick in the 4. I like the speed that I saw at Richmond. He's a little fired up. The thing that kept me going is that, 1, he said he would have taken a swipe if he could have gotten close enough. Which
I did like that.
Love that.
I did like that.
And 2, he said that it's a promise and a good look for how they are showing improvement. So get a swipe of Kevin Harvick there in Martinsville. That's who I'm going with. So over 30. I'm not going to say his age, but
I'm just going to keep waving the 9 banner.
that's all right. You keep waving it. Martinsville's coming up this Saturday night, and it's going to be so much fun under the lights there at the Paperclip. One of Steve's favorite racetracks, one of mine and Kim's favorite racetracks. So we're looking forward to this one. Make sure and tune in to the NASCAR Cup Series, and the next gen cars going racing at Martinsville this Saturday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. We'll see you guys right back here in the back seat next week. Enjoy. Eat some hot dogs for us. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more clips, highlights, and full-length episodes. Also, check out NASCAR.com to stay up to date with all the latest news.